Just joining us is still Moneyline with Nancy, and joining me right now is the General Secretary at the Nigerian Labour Congress, Dr. Peter Ozo-Eson. Dr. Ozo, good to see you again. Welcome to the show. It's been quite a while.
Thank you.
Now, NLC is supposed to embark on strike 12 a.m. Thursday morning. That's midnight today. Why did we get to this point? I know there's been a history. The last time I had you on the show was like 5 months ago when we were talking about this, and I particularly did mention at that point that if we were so optimistic that government will come up with a minimum wage, and you said we have time and all of that, but I didn't just want to sound like a pessimist. So how are we getting to this point?
Well, we decided to give the benefits of doubt to government and to everybody, and we were convinced at a stage earlier that this was a process that was going to end successfully. And the committee itself, the tripartite committee, quite seriously took the job very seriously. The representatives of organized private sector, the representatives of labor, they took this very seriously, and the chairman of the committee took the job very seriously, and we set to ourselves a time frame. We were at the point of rounding up. We had actually, revised and put together a final report. The only thing that was left was to agree the figure, because there are various other issues. We had done a draft bill that was to be part of that report. And then the Minister of Labor and Employment, who is a member of the committee, actually the deputy chairman, then walks in and says, no, government is still consulting on what they will submit, and therefore we should adjourn sine die. And we found that ridiculous because a committee had been constituted. Ours is to submit report to government. Then government can do what it wants to do with it. And we found that delay tactics, that was unfortunate. And therefore, our members got very anxious. And we even gave government a 14-day notice to say, let the committee be reconvened to complete its work and submit a report within 14 days. And that expires today, and there has been nothing. The meeting has not been reconvened. And so we have no option than to actually proceed on the mandate of our members to embark on a warning strike. Just a little correction. It's not just the NLC. It is the whole of organized labor. All the representatives of labor on the tripartite committee, we are working together. And this is a strike that is called jointly by all unions, no exception, in the country. We therefore expect that this will be a total shutdown.
So this is a warning strike?
It's a warning strike.
Is it going to be indefinite until government comes to the table again?
We will commence it, and as time goes on, we will determine when this phase of the warning strike would end, in the hope that government itself would do what is necessary so as not to prolong it. But as of today, we are saying when we are commencing. We are not saying when we are ending.
Now, do you think, with what you've said now, that means that the committee thinks that the government has been insincere in terms of their approach or in terms of their negotiations with you?
Well, yes, in a way. But you see, this is not the first minimum wage committee that has worked. In the past, I was part of the 2010 committee. The federal government never submitted a figure. And that didn't stop us from working. We went ahead, you use indices, you look at the economy, you look at employers have their own proposals, we have ours. And the committee is able to arrive at a figure. And that is what we were at the point of doing when the Minister of Labor aborted the process. And we really think that it shows lack of commitment, and we do not want to believe that he was acting out a script so that no minimum wage would be brought on board. We hope that is not the case, because the minimum wage is so overdue, the review is so overdue, that we cannot continue to exercise patience in this situation.
Has Labour arrived at a figure yet for the minimum wage? Because there's been a lot of amounts there in the news, 50,000, 66,500 and all of that. Have you arrived? I know the last time I interviewed you two, I asked you that question. You did not answer me. You said when we get to that level. But has a figure been arrived at?
No, you know, from the beginning, the process is this. We demanded for the committee to be put together. And in making that demand, we did an analysis, and on the basis of an analysis, we arrived at a figure, which was our own demand. But employers in the private sector also came to the table, and they also did some analysis and proposed a figure. We went around the 6 geopolitical zones and did public hearing. Various groups came with proposals. Specialized agencies, some of them of government, research and think tanks of government, did analysis and some proposed figures. So there is quite an array of figures that are available there. 21 state governors submitted memoranda. Out of those 21, I think 9 proposed some figures. So we have enough figures to work with. We have enough facts to work with. And therefore, the minister did not need to then say government is still consulting on its own figure. If it is unable to submit a figure, no problem. Let's use the figures we have and the general analysis on ground to then arrive at a figure which we will propose to government. That's the way it has always been. And that is the way it ought to be this time, except that the current Minister of Labour mismanaged the process.
As Labour, are you also aware that the country is facing revenue crisis? And as Labour, I know you have a lot of experts. You are an economist, a very good one at that. So do you think that the government has the capacity to pay a new minimum wage? So perhaps they don't have the capacity and they're perhaps going through the back door. We are facing a revenue crisis now. The MPC was held yesterday. I know you would have heard what Emefiele reeled out. A lot of challenges facing the economy. If we are not careful, we may just run into a fiscal crisis. Our debt profile is rising. States are not paying salaries. The 18,000 minimum wage, yeah, you cannot pay. So are we asking now for another?
No.
Have you all considered this?
Of course, we take everything together. When you're fixing minimum wage, there are various considerations. Ability to pay is one of it. And of course, you also look at the cost of living. A living wage is a consideration that you take. Here is a country that is being touted as the new capital of poverty in the world. And you want to create a huge pool of a working poor? That is not right. Even when we link it to what the MPC said yesterday, I agree with them. Yeah. But economics is clear on the matter. What is leading to recession, the threat that we may slide back into recession, shows that there isn't enough effective demand in the system. And therefore, you need to reflect the economy. If you pay wages, or you pay higher wages, it helps to stimulate aggregate demand. And if, for instance, other countries have used it. When the US was in recession under Obama, what did they do?
They stimulated by
stimulated it by raising the minimum wage and all that. So we take all these things into consideration. As for the states that are not paying salaries, I always correct people when they say they cannot. They can pay if they manage their affairs properly. These are states, you see the governors in chartered jets crisscrossing the country, and they're telling you they cannot pay. These are states in which you hear horrendous figures of security votes that are unaccounted for, and they say they cannot pay. Of course they can pay. And let us not make the mistake to always focus on just the issue of fiscal considerations. Because the minimum wage is not a government matter. It is a minimum wage for the whole of the economy. So let us not continue to consider what governors or government are saying. Let's consider what is good for the overall economy. And we are convinced, after looking at all the indices, after doing the analysis, that clearly there is need for a higher minimum wage. The level of it will be determined and moderated by some of those considerations that you've mentioned, ability to pay and all that. So when the 18,000 minimum wage was in place, how much was it then? And today, what is the value of that amount? Whether in terms of dollars or in terms of what it can buy in this economy. 18,000 naira in 2011 could have bought, we knew, multiples of bags of grain, rice or whatever. But today, it probably buys just about one bag
of rice.
You cannot expect that people are working and yet they work in poverty and cannot sustain livelihood for their families. That is not the way to run an economy.
So, in Labour's opinion, government can pay more than 18,000 naira now?
Oh, clearly. Certainly the government can pay more than
With all those physical challenges, how do you think government can raise the money to pay? Because well, I'm actually interested, yes, in that.
Yes. When you talk of the fiscal challenges, fiscal balance comes from two directions. One is the revenue stream that you get, then the use to which you put, that's the expenditure side. They continue to hammer on the revenue side that it is falling. They do not focus on the expenditure side to see how to reprioritize expenditure and therefore do a reallocation of expenditure. Our analysis shows clearly that with the existing revenue profiles, there is no single state that cannot conveniently pay the minimum wage if they set their priorities right. And these have been demonstrated. Some of the states that are the weakest in terms of fiscal revenue, some of them are not owing a couple of salary. A number of states exist that we can quote in the country. And yet you find some that are heavy or high revenue earners by SR&Co, and yet they are owing salaries. So it is not a matter of inability. It is a matter of effective management of resources and setting the right priorities.
So which way forward right now? Because I can imagine that by 12 a.m. today, Nigerians will be waking up to strike and all of that. Which way forward? And I can imagine that a lot of Nigerians wouldn't want that to happen because a lot of things perhaps will be paralyzed and all of that. Which way forward? Well,
the ball is actually in the court of the government. Because if you look at, Labour has been extremely patient with this government. It has been so patient with this government that people have even accused Labour that it is in the pocket or maybe we are part of this government. They raised the price of oil. They talked endlessly on what palliatives they would put in place. A committee submitted a report. No single element of that report has been implemented. So government, it is up to it. Nigerians cannot continue to just accept whatever they do when indeed they are not governing effectively. So government can prevent this or shorten the duration if it acts appropriately. Our demand at this stage is not even yet to say amount or implementation. Reconvene the tripartite committee and allow it to finish its work. That's the only condition for this that we have used. And if they're unable to do that, then we should hold the government responsible. And I can assure you, most Nigerians, because who are workers, will be quite happy, even if the country has to shut down. in order to drive home the importance of this matter.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. Let's see what happens, and we'll continue from there.
Sure.